Summer camp was approaching and Nicky Verstappen was still not sure if he really wanted to go or not. The year before, he did not go because he was scared of getting homesick and his parents supported his decision to stay back home. Nicky Verstappen preferred to spend summers at home in the town of Heibloem in the south of the Netherlands. That way he could always go to visit friends, play games with his younger sister, Fem, Kay, or cuddle and love up to his dog. He would always miss his dog anytime he left home for the summer camp. In the summer of 1998, even though Nicky Verstappen felt unsure about going to summer camp, he still felt that he had to go. He felt he was not 10 years old anymore, he was 11 years and was growing up. After he told his mother that he was not too sure about summer camp, she encouraged him and said that once he was there, he would have a lot of fun. Since his best friend was going too, Nicky felt everything would be okay. After concluding to go, Nicky Verstappen began to pack his necessities, not forgetting to include his favorite red and white pajamas, which was an official merchandise Vafika Jack, his favorite soccer team from Amsterdam. It was gifted to him as a Christmas present because of his love for anything that had to do with Ajax's logo and colors. In fact, most of Nicky Verstappen's room was designed with everything Ajax from color red to white. The day of summer camp came and Nicky picked up his bag, looked at his room for the last time and left. Sadly, he would never get to see the poster of Jerry Litmanen hanging against the wall of his room ever again. Nicky Verstappen was born on the 13th of March, 1987 to Peter and Bert Verstappen in Heibloem in the district of Limburg, the Netherlands. He had a loving family and was the eldest of 2 children. Nicky and his younger sister, Femke, loved to play together. Nicky, who lived in a small community of 800 people, would frequently cycle all over his hometown of Heibloem. This made many people know him. He was described as friendly and a laid-back young kid. He was also known to be a happy and well-adjusted young man. His mother described him as spontaneous and sporty. At the time, when people think of Nicky Verstappen, it was hard not to recollect the Amsterdam soccer team. Ajax, Nicky was practically a die-hard fan who would never miss a match. Nicky was said to have played soccer himself, and he also was known to be a good player. The annual summer camp for the 8 to 12 years olds came, and on Saturday, the 8th of August, 1998, Nicky Verstappen and 36 other school children from his school took the bus on a 45-minute journey from Heibloem to the town of Brunsum in order to take part in the children's summer camp being held on the De Heikop camping grounds on the Brunsummerheide. It was known that every kid from Heibloem had the opportunity to attend this summer camp every year. Nicky Verstappen, who had encouraged himself to go because of his best friend, got a bit disappointed when his best friend pulled out and decided to stay back home at the last minute. Nicky, however, decided to still go for the summer camp. He stayed on the bus as he waved his friend goodbye. On arrival at the De Heikop camping grounds, the children were divided into their various tent groups. All 37 kids were split into 10 tents, while the 4 remaining tents were shared among the 12 camp leaders. According to camp tradition, each group had to name their tents. The name was also the name of their team. Nicky Verstappen's tent, which he shared with 4 other boys his age who were his friends, was named Night Riders. Just like his mother promised, the first day of summer camp was a lot of fun with games and team-building activities. Later that night, they all gathered around a campfire while one of the leaders narrated scary ghost stories. Around 10 p.m., the kids were sent to bed while the camp leaders stayed up until midnight eating and drinking. Summer camp started off on a great path. Everyone retired to their tents for the night, feeling happy with the anticipation of a more exciting day, as there were a lot of fun-filling activities planned for the following day. Around 5 a.m. on the 10th of August, 1998, one of Nicky Verstappen's tentmate woke up to go use the toilet. At that time, the remaining tentmates, including Nicky, were still sleeping. Around 6 a.m., another kid from the Night Riders tent woke up and realized Nicky Verstappen was gone. Their initial thoughts was that he had gone to the toilet. However, 2 hours later, at 8 a.m., when the trumpet for breakfast time was played and Nicky had not still returned, his tent mates became worried. They then told their camp leaders that Nicky had gone out of their tent since 6 a.m. and had not returned. Everyone at the campsite, including the campers and camp leaders, started looking for Nicky Verstappen all over the campsite. They searched for him and called out his name numerous times, but he could not be found. Since Nicky Verstappen had been unsure of coming to summer camp, the leaders thought that he had run away. His parents in Heilbronn were then called and told that he had disappeared from the campsite and his whereabouts could not be located. This came as a shock to Nicky's parents. His mother, Bertie, versed up and sensed something was wrong. To her, she knows her son would never opt and leave the camp without informing anyone, since he was quite nervous about going away from home in the first place. It did not make any sense that he would go off on his own. Bertie and Peter then quickly left Heilbronn and traveled down to the campsite to look for their son. When they got to the campsite, Bertie noticed that Nicky's shoes were still in the tent. She felt if he had planned to run away, definitely he would have worn his shoes. Nicky's parents then joined the camp leaders to search all over the campsite, desperately calling Nicky's name, but unfortunately there was no answer. By midday, they came to a conclusion to call in the police. Later that afternoon, the search party had grown significantly. There was a massive turnout of volunteers, which were mostly friends and family from Heilbronn, as well as from the local town of Brunson. They took turns to wait at Nicky's tent and to go out and look for Nicky in the surrounding bushes and fields. The search party frantically looked for Nicky. The police, to a great extent, interrogated all the camp leaders and went to all the homes surrounding the campsite to ask if residents had maybe come across an 11-year-old boy, but it didn't yield anything. Even though Nicky's family insisted that something was seriously wrong, the search party had no real sense of panic. The only general feeling they had was that Nicky Verstappen had left the campsite by himself and had got lost in the woods. They believed he was okay and were expecting him to be found alive and well. The day of the search appeared to have been one of the hottest days of the whole summer of 1998. It was 95 degrees and it made the search even more exhausting. Camp leaders took turns to look for Nicky, while others kept the kids at the campsite occupied with activities. In the evening, armed forces were contacted to join in the search, while the kids were sent to their tents like nothing happened. While they slept, the military vehicles and searchers frantically called out Nicky's name into the darkness of the night. By the next morning, on Tuesday, Nicky was still nowhere to be found, so the camp leaders felt there was no need for camping anymore if one of them was lost. They then decided to cancel the camp. Every kid was placed in a bus and taken back home to Heilbronn, while the search party intensified their search efforts. The more they searched for Nicky Verstappen, the more it became clear that he didn't run away. The police used their dogs for the search as well, and an aerial search of the campsite was done using a plane. All efforts to find Nicky yielded no results, and by sunset, the search party was running out of daylight. Finally, around 9 p.m. on Tuesday, August 11, 1998, Nicky Verstappen's uncle, who was part of the search party, noticed something laying underneath a small pine tree. On getting closer, he saw the lifeless body of 11-year-old Nicky Verstappen. Nicky was found in a pine grove on the Shinveldug in Landgraf, less than a mile away from the campsite. He was wearing his red Ajax pajama pants and blue underpants and was naked from the waist up. His pajamas pants, which he got as a Christmas present from the previous year, were turned inside out and the front was placed to the back. Nicky had sustained a wound to his head, but at first glance, the wound did not look serious enough to have caused his death. Even though he was found in a pine grove, close to farmlands and bushes, Nicky's feet were clean. He seemed like he did not walk to the place where he was found. People believed that he was killed somewhere else, and his body was carried down to the place he was found. The spot Nicky Verstappen was found was near a parking lot that was known for where homosexual men would meet for secret sex. Aside that, movement around that area was limited. By midnight, Nicky Verstappen's body was taken to a mortuary in Maastricht, about 30 minutes away from the campsite. The people of Heilbronn came together to assist Nicky's family in arranging a memorial service for him. The memorial service took place at Heilbronn Sports Fields on Saturday, August 15, 1998, a week after he left home for summer camp. Since Nicky was wildly known in Heilbronn, 600 people attended his funeral. His love for Ajax was recognized at his funeral. His coffin was covered with the red Ajax flag, which was something he would have loved. His family would never remain the same again as they were left in a state of shock and grief. Nicky's parents felt guilty for encouraging their son to go for summer camp even when he confided in them that he was unsure of the trip. Who killed Nicky Verstappen? His family wanted answers and closure. Somebody needed to be held accountable for killing their son and brother, but the police had no leads whatsoever. Seeing that it was unlikely for Nicky to have gone off with a stranger, the police interviewed the camp leaders again. Unfortunately, nothing that could help solve the case was discovered. Nicky's post-mortem examination took place 3 days after his death. Since he was murdered in the summer of the holiday period, Nicky's family had to wait for 2 months before the results of the autopsy was released. According to the autopsy report, Nicky Verstappen was drugged and his body showed signs of sexual abuse. However, medical examiner was unable to determine a cause of death. Due to this, a second autopsy was carried out, and its result had the same conclusion with the first. There was a possibility that Nicky was sexually assaulted, but his cause of death could not be determined. Even though suffocation was suggested as his cause of death, there was not enough evidence to prove it once and for all. Following Nicky's murder, an extensive investigation was carried out, but the case went cold and would remain unsolved for 20 years. The police had to use the evidence they have. Close to the parking lot, about 100 yards from where Nicky Verstappen was found, a tissue containing semen, a cigarette butt and beer bottle top were retrieved. The forensics then compiled a DNA profile of a person other than Nicky, though it was not definite that the tissue was related to Nicky's murder case, since people often met in the parking lot and have sex in the woods. In 1997, a year before Nicky Verstappen's murder, a DNA database was created at the National Forensics Institute of the Netherlands. At the time, DNA testing was the new forensic technology and tests were a little bit restricted. Also, any DNA testing on the database could only be handled by the prosecutor and not the police. At that time, the police did not have their own database and they did not have first-hand access to the national database without an approval from the prosecutor. This made the process of quickly finding a killer somewhat slow and difficult. During the investigation of Nicky Verstappen's murder, DNA samples of 40 men were taken. The men included camp leaders, some men from a campsite nearby and other male visitors in the area at the time of Nicky's death. However, none of the DNA matched the profile found in the tissue at the crime scene. Even if the retrieved tissue with semen was probably a leftover of a sexual encounter that had nothing to do with Nicky's death, the investigators still could not strike out the evidence. Later in the investigation, there was a glimmer of hope when a single hair, similar in color to that of Nicky's, was found in the trunk of a car which belonged to one of the camp leaders. After the hair sample was sent to the UK for DNA testing, it was however discovered that it did not belong to Nicky. Immediately, the autopsy results were out. The first person of interest was Joe Barton, an 80-year-old founder of the camp Nicky and his classmates went. Joe Barton was the former principal of Nicky's school in High Blame. He had lost his job after he was convicted of child sexual abuse in the 1950s. During interrogation, he had also confessed that he was near Nicky Verstappen's tent at 6 a.m. on the morning of his disappearance. But he did not go there for Nicky. He said he went there to check on one of the boys who had burned his hand the night before. Joe's Barton alibi was that when he woke up at 5 a.m., he cleaned his tent and then went to check on the boy who burned his hand, after which he then drove back to Hebloem to attend the funeral of a friend who had died. He claimed to have heard about Nicky Verstappen's disappearance at the funeral and went straight back to the camp. Joe Barton was on the police radar for some time, and this was because he exhibited strange behavior during the search for Nicky Verstappen. He kept steering the search in the direction of the place where Nicky's body was found. He also gave the information that the parking lot near the crime scene was a place where men often meet for sex. The police was uncomfortable about Joe Barton. They decided to look into his background. Even though he was a respected member of his community, he had been convicted for child sexual assault and was imprisoned for 3 months before he was let go and allowed to work with kids again. Several years later, photos of young boys who were shirtless or in their underpants were discovered on him, though there were no proofs that he further molested any male child at the time. However, after Nicky Verstappen's death, a 15-year-old girl came forward and said that she had every reason to believe Joe Barton had sexually molested her when she attended summer camp earlier that year in 1998. She claimed she was unwell one evening and Juz Barton had given her medication that turned out to be sleeping drugs for adults. She said when she woke up, her clothes were messy and different from the way they were when she went to bed. The girl also claimed to have experienced lower abdominal pain and discomfort. The police could not do anything about her confession since she did not report the incident earlier. After much interrogation, Juz Barton could not be arrested due to lack of sufficient evidence to pin him to the kidnapping and murder of Nicky Verstappen. A reward of 250,000 guilders was offered for any lead that could bring the suspect to justice. As time went, Nicky's family became frustrated as they sensed lack of urgency in solving their son's murder. They resorted to a well-known television crime reporter at the time, Peter Davries, and asked him to help them to solve the mystery surrounding their son's death. Peter Davries agreed to help them look into the case. Over the years, his involvement in the case turned out to be a salvation for Nicky's family. Peter Davries launched a campaign on behalf of the Verstappen family, and the reward money was doubled to 500,000 guilders by unknown business people. In April 1999, the first in-depth documentary about Nicky's murder case was broadcast nationally. The documentary talked about Juz Barton's child sexual assault in the past. It brought up questions like, why was he allowed to work with children after being a convicted sex offender? The documentary seemed to put pressure on the police to investigate Juz Barton further. This divided the small community of Highblowham. Nicky's case threatened to tear the community apart. While some people wanted to protect the founder of the camp, some people supported Nicky's family in their quest to find out the truth, even if it meant asking confronting questions. As time went by, majority of the people in Highblowham chose to stay away from Nicky's family. They believed the Verstappens were out on a witch hunt. Nicky's family only held on to a handful of faithful friends who supported them through the case. In July of 1999, Nicky Verstappen was ruled unsolved. The next month, in August, Bertie and Peter Verstappen had an opportunity to meet with Queen Beatrix, the former Queen of the Netherlands. They handed her a letter, which was an official complaint about the slow investigation in the death of their son. Due to this, efforts were subsequently intensified by the prosecutor in my asterisk to solving the case. In 2001, Nicky's grandparents and the town of Brunssum silently built a monument for Nicky at the spot where his body was found. This didn't make Nicky's parents feel any better. His mother, Bertie, would always light a candle in their family home every morning as soon as she woke up. She did this for 20 years. In an interview with Peter Davries, she said, "I wake up at night and hear his voice. He calls me. I get up and go to look for Nicky, but he is no longer there." Their happy and complete family of 4 had become an unhappy, incomplete, and broken family of 3. Since answers were not forthcoming at the time, Bertie, who did not let that stop her, had promised on national TV to bring the killer of her child to justice as long as she was still alive. In February of 2001, Bertie and Peter Verstappen wrote a public letter to the Minister of Justice asking for help on their son's case. They claim to be at the mercy of the police and the legal systems, but they have no answers. The legal system then decided to act as there appeared to have been a total breakdown in trust by the people of Highblowham. The general public were getting disappointed at the police and the legal systems for not giving answers as to who killed Nicky Verstappen. In that same year, the case was renewed and a second opinion task force was given the case to investigate from scratch. On the 29th of June 2001, the investigative team was able to determine the time of Nicky's death. His time of death was estimated to have been between 2 p.m. on the 10th of August or 9 a.m. on the 11th of August. It means Nicky Verstappen was alive for at least 8 hours before he was murdered. New DNA technology also discovered that there were little drops of blood on Nicky's pajamas. One of the drops was tested for foreign DNA, but it turned out to be that of Nicky. Further investigation revealed many mistakes made by the first set of investigators that made the case become cold for some time. One of the mistakes was that these investigators focused on the scene where Nicky was found. They used that spot as the crime scene, forgetting that Nicky's feet were clean when he was found, which suggested that he did not walk to that place himself. He was carried away from the main crime scene and dumped at the spot he was found. The first investigation did not look for possible evidence beyond the pine tree where Nicky was found. Even the campsite where Nikki was last seen was not properly considered for possible clues that could pinpoint the killer. As time unfolds, Deuce Barton was not the only suspect in the case. In 1998, at the time that Nikki and his friends were camping, there appeared to have been another group from the Rolled Duck Seminary who pitched their tents nearby. A man named Rolled Duck's chef had piqued the interest of the police, and this was because he had once had an inappropriate contact with a child before. They believed he was someone who would do it again. On the morning of Nikki Versteppen's disappearance, Rolled Duck was not at the campsite. When questioned, he appeared to have no alibi for his whereabouts at the time. However, he died in 1999 before the police could find enough evidence to arrest him. Also, a man simply known as Vim was another person of interest at the time. Vim was a sex offender from a town nearby. Different witnesses spotted him near the Highcop campsite in a dark-colored vehicle around August 10, 1998. He was questioned by the police in 2001, 2003, 2006, and 2007. Anytime a witness came forward pointing a finger at him. Unfortunately, there was no sufficient evidence to pin him to the crime, and in 2007, he died at the age of 64. Until his death, Vim had said he never killed Nikki Versteppen. Martin A., the German serial killer, was someone the police could not afford to overlook in this case. He had killed 3 boys and had sexually molested at least 40 children between 1992 and 2001. Martin A. was known as the Masked Man or the Black Man, and this is because he used to wear black clothing and a creepy black mask. His victims were usually hunted by him at campsites or in children's homes. Since the Hickop campsite was located close to the Dutch-German border and one of Ney's proven crimes was committed in the Netherlands, he was considered as serious suspect. However, when he was eventually arrested for all his crimes in 2001, Martinet denied any involvement in Nikki Verstappen's murder. As the investigation progresses, the police had quite a number of suspects on their list. The likes of Michel Fernier and Mark Hoffman, who were sex offenders at the time, were considered suspects to Nikki Verstappen's homicide case, but thorough investigation vindicated them, and they were never charged with his murder. In 2004, Peter de Vries became aware of new testing techniques in the science of DNA. He then informed the public and told the police to re-examine the blood found on Nikki Verstappen's clothing. In 2005, an anonymous person placed letters on Nikki's memorial in Bronson, claiming to have been responsible for killing him. Investigators traced the letters to a 36-year-old man, but it turned out to be a false confession. The man was a psychiatric patient who had severe mental health issues. His therapist explained that he had written the letters as a way of getting attention. The man was placed in custody for 2 weeks for vandalizing Nikki Verstappen's grave. In 2008, when it seemed like all hope was lost, detectives announced that foreign DNA had been found on Nikki's pajamas pants and his underpants. Previous suspects in the case were all retested, but there were still no matches to the DNA found. Nevertheless, Nikki's family was positive. It might seem like another dead end, but the discovery of the foreign DNA profile meant there was proof of a male individual being in physical contact with Nikki Verstappen before his death. Nikki's family prayed and hoped that the perpetrator would be found before he could hurt any other person. In the year 2010, Nikki Verstappen's sister, Femke, who was in her 20s by then, made a public appeal to every man in the community to participate in a DNA testing so that the family could have some sense of closure. After the appeal, the police gathered a list of over 100 men. These men were initially part of the search party and camp management. 80 out of 114 men agreed to provide saliva swabs. Even though it was quite a high number of turnouts for the DNA analysis, Peter de Vries took to the media again to encourage people to be partakers of the DNA tests. It seemed a lot of these men were scared of leaving their DNA samples because they do not want to be caught for a past crime. However, after Peter de Vries explained that their DNAs would only be used for the Nikki Verstappen's case, additional 40 men came forward. After carrying out a comprehensive test on the retrieved DNA samples, there was still no match to the DNA found on Nikki's clothing. In a desperate attempt to find the truth, the remains of Just Barton, who had died in 2003, were exhumed for testing. There was hope at that point since Just Barton had been the strongest suspect throughout the years. However, many people became surprised when the DNA of Just Barton did not match the DNA found on Nicky Verstappen's clothes. In the early days of 2012, Nicky Verstappen's homicide case was transferred to a cold case team. The new investigators went through Nicky's case file from the very beginning to end. After that, they located a group of 1,500 males, all of whom had ties to the region near the campsite where Nicky Verstappen was last seen. The individuals on the list were either camp employees, residents of the neighborhood, or officially charged sex offenders. But once again, they were out of luck. The police did not give up easily. They renewed their request for public assistance in 2017. They requested over 20,000 DNA samples in order to perform kinship analysis. By this, investigators would have more information about the killer's relatives, which would greatly reduce the scope of their search. In the long run, only 15,000 volunteers participated. However, the size of this DNA dragnet operation was unprecedented in Dutch history. Given that there was nothing more to be done, it was a long shot but also the last option. Bulk DNA sweeping is a significant project and numerous ethical issues have been brought up in relation to it. Most people believe that cooperating was a no-brainer if they had nothing to conceal, and their DNA profile may help investigators identify the killer of a young child. Authorities sent mails to all the men requesting new DNA samples. Police would attempt to persuade them to assist if there were no answers from them by visiting them at home. One of the men, named Jos Breck, who was supposed to provide a sample, did not show up. 2 police officers went to his house, but he wasn't there. The man, according to his relatives, traveled to France in February of 2012 and did not return. Jos Breck's family reported him missing in April. He had vanished from his home and presumably ran away before the police could find him and extract his DNA. Authorities investigated this man's past to learn who he was because they had concerns about him. When Nicky Verstappen was killed, Jos Breck was 35 years old. He resided in Simpelveld with his mother, which is about 12 miles from the campsite. He was a committed scout member and frequently served as a camp leader as well. He had also spent some years providing childcare in Brunsum. He had once been involved in a case of sexual abuse of 2 10-year-old boys in 1985. Despite making a confession to the crime, he was not found guilty. He only got a 2-year probationary period and his name was never added to the list of sex offenders. That was why he evaded detection when local police conducted a DNA search of all sex offenders. His name was never mentioned. On August 10, 1998, Jos Breck was in the immediate area of Nicky's disappearance. Around midnight on Tuesday, August 11, 1998, police stopped him while he was cycling on a road close to the crime site. Few hours before he was seen by the police, Nicky Verstappen's corpse had just been discovered, and at the time the police saw Jos Breck, Nicky's body was being transported from the campsite to Maastricht for the autopsy. When the cops questioned him about why he was out cycling at that time, Jos Breck responded that he was delivering letters to scout members because it was too hot to have done so during the day. The explanation seemed reasonable to the officers because that particular day had been very hot. However, when he was questioned later during investigation, he provided a different explanation. Child pornography was discovered on his personal computer in August 1998, the same month when Nicky Verstappen was murdered. But once again, Jos Breck only got a warning. One of the 15,000 DNA samples provided to authorities during the bulk DNA search in 2017 revealed a close match to the foreign DNA found on Nicky Verstappen. The DNA sample belonged to a relative of the individual whose DNA was found on Nicky's clothes. That person happened to be related to the missing Jos Breck. In order to create a DNA profile, police asked Jos Breck's family if he had left behind a hairbrush or toothbrush as they were getting closer to solving the case. His family assisted the authorities and provided them with some of his personal belongings. Finally, after 20 painful long years, all the effort paid off. At the start of June 2018, the forensics discovered a 100% perfect match between Jos Breck's and the DNA found on Nicky's pajamas and underpants. Detectives were, however, requested to keep the new information to themselves in order to avoid alerting the offender. The investigators now began a massive global search for Jos Breck. Jos Breck's last known location was in the Vosges mountain region of northern France, where he served as a survival expert who guided nature expeditions into the mountains. Keep in mind that he was an experienced scout member who knew what he was doing. When Jos Brecht departed the Vosges, no one knew where he had gone because he had not used his credit cards or his phone. Police discovered that he had improved his survival skills and had made preparations to vanish and live off the grid. His computer search history demonstrated that he was well prepared because he had done extensive study on small towns throughout Europe, places where Dutch news would not be reported. According to law enforcement, the only way to get him out of his hiding spot was to ask the public for assistance. On August 22, 2018, they revealed at a press conference that DNA samples from Jos Brecht's personal items matched the DNA discovered on Nixie Versteppen's clothing. They also disclosed his name and current age. Due to privacy laws in the Netherlands and the rule that everyone is considered innocent until proven guilty, it is customary to only use the first letter of a surname. However, this instance was unique because it required assistance from law officials to find Jos Brecht. The public appeal worked because the week following the press conference, a Dutch resident of northern Spain who had seen Jos Brecht's picture in the newspaper recognized him and called the police to report his whereabouts. Jos Brecht was living in a tent next to a commune house in the village of Castellterçol, north of Barcelona. 20 years after Niki Verstappen's death, on August 26, 2018, Jos Brecht was taken into custody. The passport he had with him at the time of his arrest served as proof of his name. He was returned to the Netherlands on September 6, 2018 and appeared in court for the first time in December 2018. Peter de Vries rejoiced with Niki Verstappen's family following the arrest of Jos Brecht. There was a strong feeling of relief and accomplishment. Jos Brecht had been questioned in 2001 regarding his presence close to the crime scene on the night Niki's body was discovered, and he had confessed to child molestation in the past. In his words, he said, "Yes, I can imagine why you'd want to speak to me because I have had some brushes with the law in the past in connection with child abuse." This statement was not followed up on or a DNA sample taken. Jos Brecht was not on the sex offenders list, but he had effectively placed himself on it. This case would have been long solved if only the police had thoroughly looked into Jos Brecht back then. In December 2018, the trial commenced in Maastricht. Jos Brecht was charged with manslaughter rather than murder. Manslaughter is a less serious charge. There isn't enough evidence to prove that the murder was premeditated, as there would be in a murder case. Jos Brecht pled not guilty in court and defended himself, saying his DNA was found on Niki's clothing because when he was walking close to the edge of a forest back at the camp area, he saw something in the distance and went to look out of curiosity, only for him to find Niki's body. He said that he had checked for signs of life, brushed leaves off the body, and then left without any other action because of his previous convictions. The prosecutor argued that a total of 27 traces of Jos Brecht's DNA had been found on Niki's body, including on his underwear. Jos Brecht still maintained his innocence, saying he had no idea how his DNA ended up on Niki's underwear. After trial, Jos Brecht was found guilty, and on the 28th of January 2022, an appeal court convicted him on a charge of manslaughter and sentenced him to 16 years imprisonment. Will Niki Verstappen's family ever find satisfaction? Even though they may have some answers, their son will always be 11 years old, even as his peers age and progress through life. Every day, they are plagued by countless unanswered questions, such as, would Niki have grown up to realize his goal of playing professional soccer? They are wounded and they no longer believe in people. Femke Verstappen continues her mother's custom of lighting a candle for Niki each day and keeping fresh flowers around the house, even though she is an adult with a kid of her own. Case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998, in the small Swedish town of Ho, where she grew up in a peaceful environment with her parents and older sister. Lisa was a kind, positive, and determined individual with a strong personality. She had already made up her mind to study architecture in Australia before completing her education. Lisa's love for travel was sparked by numerous trips with her parents to various countries, which also instilled in her a sense of independence from her teenage years. To earn her own money, she took on part-time jobs. In the summer of 2015, at the age of 17, Lisa landed her first job at a cafe located about 40 minutes from her home. Initially, her parents drove her to work, but soon her father gifted her a scooter. The scooter was a welcome gift, allowing her to commute to work independently. However, for the first few weeks, her father accompanied to ensure her safety, as she had limited experience driving on the roads. Lisa only works on weekends and her father always takes her to and from the cafe home. However, on June 7th, her father decided to let her drive herself. On that particular day, her parents visited her at work during lunch when the cafe was very busy. They had a quick snack together before returning home. Later that day at 6:23, Lisa sent her father a text saying she was leaving work. 3 minutes later, he received a call from her, but there was no answer when he picked up. He heard a soft voice over the phone and the sound of a car door closing, leading him to believe that Lisa had accidentally dialed his number while talking to a coworker. Despite calling out her name several times, he got no response and eventually ended the call, expecting her to arrive home soon. However, as the minutes ticked by, Lisa failed to show up, causing her parents to grow increasingly worried. It was her first time driving the scooter alone, and her father was deeply concerned for her safety. He attempted to call her multiple times, but her phone was turned off. After a few more minutes of waiting, Lisa's father decided to drive along the route she would have taken, hoping to meet her along the way. He drove slowly, scanning the road for any sign of her, fearing she might have been in an accident. Despite his efforts, there was no sign of Lisa. The man arrived at the cafe where his daughter Lisa worked, but she wasn't there. However, her scooter was parked outside, which initially calmed his nerves. But upon closer inspection, he noticed her scooter keys were still in the ignition and her helmet was hanging from the handle. This discovery raised his concerns, as Lisa would never leave her scooter unattended. Around the same time, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to get some information about her daughter's whereabouts. The cafe owner claimed to be unaware of Lisa's location and explained that she had spoken to her employees earlier, who said they were closing the cafe. The cafe owner then drove to the cafe and met up with Lisa's father. Together, they began searching the cafe and its surroundings. The cafe owner also enlisted the help of 4 friends who lived nearby. As the search continued, Lisa's mother and older sister checked the bus schedule, thinking it was possible that Lisa might have taken the bus instead of her scooter. They drove to the bus stop in their town, but unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Despite their efforts, Lisa's family was still unable to find her, and their concerns continued to grow. Lisa's relatives quickly contacted the police after realizing she was missing. It was nearly 1 p.m. Police quickly conducted an extensive search. A crucial discovery was Lisa's scooter, which was left in the parking lot with the keys still in it, leading the police to suspect she might have been abducted. Abductions are extremely rare in Sweden, particularly in Lisa's rural hometown, so the police responded swiftly by deploying multiple search teams with dogs and having officers canvass every nearby house. As news of Lisa's disappearance spread, her classmates and friends took to social media to raise awareness and potentially gather witness accounts. Despite the overnight search, no progress was made. On Monday morning, the police publicly announced Lisa's disappearance and urged anyone with information to come forward. Around the same time, a man working at a barn across from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives re-examined a barn previously inspected on the evening of Lisa's disappearance and discovered a glove. They presented the glove to Lisa's parents, who identified it as their daughter's, providing further evidence for the abduction theory. Police have stepped up the search by sending additional personnel and equipment to assist. By then, Lisa's disappearance had made national headlines, drawing hundreds of volunteers to the search. On Tuesday, the police received multiple leads. A group of volunteers searched a dirt road near the cafe, finding a phone case, receipt, ticket, and broken smartphone screen. After discovering these items, investigators confirmed that they all belonged to Lisa, so they concentrated the search in that area. Further investigation yielded additional parts of the broken smartphone, Lisa's ID, and more receipts. These items were all scattered along the same dirt road, increasing the police's certainty that Lisa was indeed a victim of abduction. The search for Lisa quickly gained a large amount of attention and support, with the number of people involved growing significantly each day. This case became the main news story in Sweden. Hundreds of volunteers from across the country flocked to participate in the search. A group of local volunteers specializing in finding missing people also participated in the search for Lisa. This made Lisa's search operation the largest in Sweden's modern history, with over 1,000 people involved. The police received numerous calls with potential leads. A woman reported a suspicious incident while she was jogging. The day before Lisa went missing, a man standing next to his car stopped her on the road and asked for directions to an unfamiliar city in English. When she tried to help him using Google Maps, the man asked her to get into his car to show the route on his navigator. The woman found this request suspicious and refused, continuing her jog instead. The woman shared a crucial detail with the police. She believed she had seen the man before, among the workers repairing a barn across the road from the cafe where Lisa was last seen. On the day Lisa went missing, her co-workers noticed something unusual. A witness saw two men standing across the road from the cafe, stared at the shop. Although the witness didn't think much of it at the time, but she shared this detail with the police after Lisa's disappearance. The following morning, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings were found. As they went further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. It seemed that Lisa's abductor was throwing her belongings out of a vehicle. Despite all efforts, police and volunteers found no other clues in the area. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was driving home from the search when he noticed that the police tape had been removed from the barn Lisa's glove was found. He decided to re-examine the barn for clues. The friend retrieved a flashlight from his car as it was getting dark and searched the barn for several minutes. He soon spotted something shiny on the floor, which turned out to be a woman's earring, along with an identical earring nearby. The man reported his discovery to the police, who then showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. After confirming that the earrings belonged to their daughter, the police conducted a more thorough search of the storehouse. Initially, the detective explained that the primary focus on the first day of the search was finding Lisa herself. As a result, the barn was not thoroughly inspected, and small items like earrings may have been overlooked. This time, however, numerous forensic experts and search dogs were brought in to aid in the investigation. During the more extensive search, the police found a piece of evidence behind one of the walls that initially seemed unrelated to the case: human feces. Forensic experts, however, proposed an intriguing theory. According to them, in the aftermath of committing severe crimes, the perpetrator's body often releases a significant amount of adrenaline, sometimes leading to a sudden and uncontrollable urge to defecate. It's not uncommon for perpetrators to lose control of their bodily functions due to adrenaline during a crime. Given that Lisa's glove and earrings were discovered in the storehouse, investigators suspected that if she was abducted, the perpetrator might have taken her to the storehouse. They considered the possibility that the perpetrator, under the influence of adrenaline, might have relieved themselves and left behind feces. These feces were subsequently sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded and volunteers searched a farm approximately 2 miles from the cafe. The farm consisted of several large buildings with many employees, and the search team decided to inspect each one. Shortly after their arrival, 2 men appeared, communicating only in English as they didn't speak Swedish. One of them claimed that the police had already searched the farm, but the search team leader was skeptical. He believed he would have been informed if the police had indeed visited the farm, so he decided to proceed with the search. The 2 men observed the volunteers for a while before leaving. About an hour later, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cow sheet. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones hidden underneath. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and confirmed that the items found were indeed Lisa's. To gather more evidence, forensic experts were dispatched to the farm for a thorough investigation. Detectives also investigated the story about 2 suspicious men who attempted to deter volunteers from searching the farm. During their inquiry, the police revisited a report from a woman who encountered an English-speaking man while jogging. The police had a potential suspect in mind. In the early stages of the search, they had visited nearby houses, includes a house where 2 Lithuanian brothers live with their wives. What caught the police's attention was that these three individuals did not speak Swedish and communicated in English, making them the only people in the area who did not speak the local language. Additionally, the police had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at a barn near the cafe and the farm where Lisa's helmet was found, indicating they were familiar with these locations. Furthermore, the dirt road where Lisa's belongings were discovered led directly to their house. The police decided to question the three individuals since they were the prime suspects. Meanwhile, forensic experts and volunteers arrived at the farm to continue their inspection. Their attention was drawn to an old neglected trailer surrounded by tall grass, which seemed abandoned for years. However, the flattened grass near the door suggested recent activity. Trapped grass under the door also indicated it had been opened recently. Upon opening the door, the forensic experts were met with a strong smell of decay. Inside, they found a changing room with multiple clothing lockers. All are locked except one. This led them to suspect that Lisa's body might be inside one of the locked lockers. However, they eventually found Lisa's body in an unlocked closet, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small space, the perpetrator managed to fit Lisa inside. A rope was around her neck, and her head was covered with a large amount of tape. Her pants were pulled down, and her shirt was pulled up. Medical experts concluded that Lisa's cause of death was strangulation, with no evidence of sexual assault. Her clothing was sent to the lab for further examination. As news of her body's discovery spread rapidly across the country, the case had already been making headlines in Sweden. The brutality of Lisa's murder shocked the entire nation, as such crimes were extremely rare in Sweden. A strange and disturbing discovery was made on YouTube the same day her body was discovered. A video titled 13 featuring a countdown timer had been posted 13 days before the murder. What makes this video scarier is that it was uploaded to a channel called Lisa Home. News of the video spread quickly through the media, leaving many people stunned by the series of coincidences. Some speculated that the murder had been predicted, but it was later revealed that the channel name and video title had been changed after Lisa's body was discovered, explaining the eerie coincidence. This has raised concerns that this could be a joke or an attempt to create another conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, the police worked day and night tirelessly to catch Lisa's murderer and solve the case as quickly as possible. At the time of the discovery, investigators had already questioned two brothers and a woman, all of whom denied any involvement in the murder. The three individuals claimed to have been at home at the time of the abduction, providing alibis for one another. According to their accounts, the older brother, Narages, was asleep in his room while his wife was preparing dinner and the younger brother was using the computer. Narages also stated that around 8 p.m., he woke up and went to a gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police were skeptical of their alibis, as it was possible that the three were covering for each other. DNA samples were collected, but initially, no evidence directly linked any of them to the murder. However, this was short-lived. Forensic experts were working diligently in the storehouse and on the farm, utilizing all available resources, and soon their efforts paid off. In the storehouse, a small office-like room was discovered with a large window overlooking the cafe. Upon investigation, experts found 15 semen stains on the walls and floor near the window, suggesting someone had been standing there, watching the cafe employees, including Lisa, and engaging in self-gratification. The semen samples were sent to the lab for analysis, and DNA profiles were quickly extracted. All 15 samples matched the DNA of 35-year-old Narages. Additionally, the feces found in the storehouse also belonged to him. In the adjacent room, previously used for storing cow's milk, forensic experts noticed a pipe about 2 feet above the floor with a thick layer of dust, except for a small strip. The size of this strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was also found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed it belonged to Narages. On the floor beneath the pipe, a piece of the same rope was discovered. Experts analyzed it and found 2 DNA profiles, Lisa's and Narages's. This discovery was an important clue for the police. This indicates that the rope used to kill Lisa was related to Narages. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the room where Lisa's body was found, a hair belonging to her. Further investigation revealed DNA traces from Neridge's on Lisa's jacket, leading the police to believe she was killed in that location. Police have been studying the evidence and using it to piece together what might have happened. Neridge's had been watching the cafe for some time and waited for an opportunity to strike. When Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her, possibly asking for directions or using another tactic to gain her trust. He may have then asked her to get into his car to enter the route into the GPS system. Given Lisa's kind nature and willingness to help others, it's likely she agreed to help him. Once she was in the car, Neridge's taped her mouth shut and drove her to the storehouse. There, he bound her with a rope. According to medical experts, the killer's adrenaline rush at the scene may have caused him to lose control of his bodily functions, resulting in defecation on the floor. After Lisa's death, the perpetrator placed her body in the car and drove to the farm, discarding her belongings along the way. He then hid her body in the trailer locker, covering it with old clothes. The entire ordeal, from abduction to hiding the body, took the perpetrator less than an hour. Neridge maintains his innocence despite mounting evidence against him. His wife and younger brother were released due to lack of evidence and promptly returned to their home country, Lithuania. The trial preparations were intense, with Neridge claiming his DNA was found at the crime scene because he had worked in the storehouse for a long time. He also provided an alibi which was corroborated by his wife and brother, although their credibility was questionable. This defense may work in court, but the finding of Neridge's DNA on Lisa's clothing suggests direct contact on the day of the murder. Furthermore, a witness reported seeing Neridge's car near the cafe around the time of Lisa's abduction, contradicting his alibi. The car was seen driving back and forth between the cafe and the farm, while Neridge claimed to have been sleeping at home, according to his brother and wife. Months after Lisa's body was discovered, experts continued to analyze the evidence using advanced equipment. They found Neridge's DNA on nearly all of Lisa's clothing, including her underwear. Given the high-profile nature of the case, investigators sought additional clues to solidify the evidence against Neridge. As part of their investigation, they traveled to Lithuania to re-question Neridge's wife and brother. Neridge's wife maintained her initial alibi, claiming he was at home between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. However, when detectives spoke with Neridge's younger brother, they finally obtained the information they needed. After being presented with the evidence against Neridge and the details of the crime, the younger brother revealed that Neridge was not at home that evening. According to the younger brother, Neridge returned around 7:30 p.m., covered in dirt, and immediately washed his clothes. When the police began questioning the residents and approached their house, Neridge instructed his brother to tell police he was home at the time of the crime. Neridge later explained that he was afraid of being wrongly accused due to his immigrant status and lack of alibi during the abduction. The younger brother initially believed Neridge innocent, but after learning about the evidence, he realized this wasn't true. A month after murder, a large crowd attended Lisa's funeral, far exceeding the church's capacity of 130 people. To accommodate the mourners, organizers set up benches and large screens outside, allowing everyone to watch the ceremony. For months later, the trial began. Neridge's lawyer argued that his client's DNA on Lisa's clothing could be explained by his work in the storehouse. However, they countered that this explanation didn't hold up, especially regarding Lisa's underwear. The only plausible way Neridge's DNA could have ended up on her underwear was through direct contact. The lawyer failed to provide any evidence supporting Neridge's innocence. At one point, lawyers suggested an alternative theory that Neridge's younger brother was the real killer. The lawyer failed to address the possibility of DNA manipulation during the trial, which lasted a month and resulted in Neridge being found guilty of murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment in a high-security Swedish prison, which offered relatively comfortable living conditions. Neridge's lawyer attempted to appeal the verdict but was unsuccessful. In 2017, Neridge made a surprising decision when he requested to be deported to a prison in Lithuania. Despite Lithuanian prisons being notoriously worse than Swedish ones, the court granted his request, probably because it would result in substantial cost savings for Swedish taxpayers. It did not take long to understand the reason behind Marriage's decision. He appealed to the Lithuanian court and successfully had his sentence reduced from life to 15 years. However, this victory was short-lived as the court later overturned the decision, reinstating his life sentence. Unfortunately for Marriages, he was now stuck in a Lithuanian prison, with no chance of returning to the more comfortable Swedish prison. In August 2022, 5 years after his initial imprisonment, Marriages has been transferred to another prison in Lithuania, where he encountered another life-threatening situation. During a block transfer, an inmate attacked Marriages with a shank, causing severe injuries that ultimately led to his death on the way to the hospital. Regarding Marriages, the question of her involvement in the crime remains unclear. Although police believe it is highly unlikely that she was directly involved in the abduction or murder, they do not rule out the possibility that she may have been aware of her husband's actions and provided a false alibi to help him. If she had been directly involved, experts would have likely found her DNA on Lisa's clothing or belongings. Additionally, Marriage's younger brother has raised suspicions. Cafe employees reported seeing two men, likely Marriages and his younger brother, standing near the barn and watching the employees. However, the younger brother's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothing, making his involvement in the murder unlikely. It is possible that the brothers were indeed observing the employees and discussing inappropriate topics, but only Marriages ultimately committed the crime. 911 operators received a terrible phone call in January of 2001. The caller had called to inform them that a young mother named Pamela Shelley had shot and killed herself. After the autopsy had been done, the forensic pathologist determined Pamela Shelley's death to be a suicide. However, neither Pamela's family nor the police believed the results. The case went cold, but one tenacious detective made it a point of duty to keep up with the investigation after years of questioning Pamela's apparent death. With a little assistance from a true crime television program, the case was reopened. Today's case takes us to the small town of Cuero, Texas, which was shaken by the death of Pamela Shelley. Pamela Jean Shelley was born on the 25th of July, 1969 in Houston, Texas, but she was raised in the quaint community of Ashdown, Arkansas, which had a population of 4,500. At the time, Pamela comes from a family that worked hard. Her mother worked at a nursing facility while her father drove a truck for lodging. She also had a brother and a sister. Pamela Shelley was described as being extremely kind and outgoing with everyone around her. When Pamela Shelley was 16 years old, she met her first husband, Jesse Suggs, who was 20 years old at the time. They discussed their future plans of getting married one day. However, Pamela's father wanted her to complete high school before any other thing. So, following her high school graduation, she and Jesse got married immediately. Not long after, they became parents, giving birth to Kayla, their first child and daughter. Just 4 years into their marriage, Pamela and Jesse began to have problems. Jesse frequently used narcotics to get high, and eventually his drug problems caused him to lead a life of crime. Pamela and Jesse had an on-and-off relationship for a while before finally getting a divorce. In the summer of 1991, Pamela Shelley got married to another man by the name of Gary. They conceived a child they named Dustin. The marriage lasted just a year, after which she briefly moved back in with Jesse, her ex-husband, before finally moving in with her parents. Some years later, Pamela Shelley reconnected with Ronnie Hendricks, a childhood acquaintance. She and Ronnie always seemed to click, but they hadn't spoken in over a decade. After they rekindled their relationship, Ronnie proposed to her and invited her and the kids to come live with him in Cuero, Texas, to which Pamela agreed. In the summer of 2000, she and her son Dustin alongside Ronnie then traveled to Cuero by car for 8 hours. Pamela's daughter, Kayla, was to join them few months later. The family of Ronnie Hendricks resided in Cuero, Texas. According to Ronnie's mother, Deborah, everything was going well with them until Kayla moved in. She said, Kayla altered the entire dynamic in the house, making her son Ronnie to frequently get into an argument with her because he would always push her to assist around the house. Deborah and Ronnie claimed that Kayla also insisted on her and her mother returning to Arkansas so she could be with her father. Ronnie and Pamela became at odds virtually every day until horror struck on the 6th of January 2001. Ronnie Hendrick claimed he was on the porch of their home on the 6th of January 2001 when he heard a gunshot from inside. At exactly 5 o'clock, he dialed 911 and not long, the DeWitt County Police arrived the scene. On getting inside, the police and the EMTs found Pamela Shelley unresponsive on the bathroom floor. Her right temple had been shot, the gun was on the counter, and there was blood all over. Ronnie Hendrick was informed by the EMTs that it would take them an hour to reach the closest hospital. Ronnie promised to accompany them and said he knew how to get there more quickly by taking the back roads. Pamela wasn't in a good state, but she was still alive. However, she was declared brain dead in the hospital on January 7th after being put on life support. Jesse, Pamela's ex-husband, arrived at the hospital and picked up the kids to take them back to Arkansas. The medical examiner determined that Pamela's death was a suicide on January 8, 2001. Given that the gunshot wound made very close contact with the skin, it was established that it was self-inflicted. However, Sheriff Carl Bowen, who was placed in charge of the case, rejected the suicide theory. Sheriff Bowen had a conversation with Jesse Suggs, who confessed that he and Pamela's relationship was quite rough because he couldn't get his act right. When asked when he last saw Pamela, Jesse said they had both shared a bed the night before she went for Texas. He further explained that Pamela had intended to return with his children on January 6th and that he had traveled to Texas to bring them back to Arkansas. Jesse was aware of Ronnie, Pamela, and Kayla's constant issues. As part of the investigation, Jesse agreed to take a polygraph, which he successfully passed. Since Pamela Shelley was shot when Jesse was 800 miles away in Arkansas at his mother's house, he was ruled out as a suspect. The next person the investigators had a chat with was Ronnie Hendrick. He told the police that he had been outside on the porch when he heard what appeared to be a gunshot. He then rushed inside and discovered Pamela lying on the floor, bleeding from a head wound. He claimed to have protected 12-year-old Kayla and 9-year-old Dustin from the gruesome scene. Ronnie further acknowledged that Pamela and the kids had packed up their belongings that morning, preparing to return to Arkansas. According to him, Pamela Shelley had been depressed over going back to Arkansas. However, the relocation was compelled by family matters, particularly because of the discord between him and Kayla. Ronnie told the police that Pamela didn't want to return, but had to since she was afraid of losing her children. Despite the autopsy results, the investigators were bothered with the case contradictions. They wondered why Pamela Shelley packed her whole belongings into a car if she wanted to kill herself. Additionally, Ronnie Hendrick's portrayal of a young woman intent on suicide didn't line up with what authorities knew about Pamela Shelley. According to Sheriff Carl Bowen, a former deputy with the DeWitt County Sheriff's Office, Pamela Shelley's death may have been the result of an accident or homicide. In order to find answers, officials requested that Ronnie Hendrick undergo a polygraph test, to which he agreed but failed to show up for 3 different appointments. He either postponed or simply failed to show up, before completely disappearing. The investigation was concluded and the case went cold after the medical examiner determined that suicide was the cause of death. However, 7 years after Pamela Shelley's passing, Sheriff Carl Bowen decided to re-examine the case because he had never believed it was a suicide. The medical examiner nevertheless was still certain that Pamela's autopsy result was correct. Sheriff Carl Bowen retrieved Pamela's medical records for a proper and thorough examination. It was discovered that Pamela Shelley often suffered from stress-induced seizures and she was taking a low-grade antidepressants for it. Sheriff Bowen had a conversation with Kyla, who confessed that Ronnie allegedly attacked her on January 4th, 2 days before her mother was found dead. According to Kyla, Ronnie then attacked her mother and blackened her eyes so bad when she defended her from him. They later visited a hospital. Pamela and the children decided that they would inform the medical professionals that Pamela had fallen into a coffee table. After the incident, Pamela made the decision to take the children back to Arkansas on January 6th, since that was what they genuinely wanted. After this revelation, in 2008, Sheriff Carl Bowen tracked down Ronnie Hendrick at the county jail. Ronnie had been taken into custody after hitting his girlfriend. He was then asked to retell the incident that occurred on the 6th of January 2001. The police noticed inconsistencies with his stories. He was also asked to take a polygraph exam, which revealed that he was being deceptive. The investigators knew something was fishy, but they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute Ronnie for Pamela's murder. The case, however, went cold again until 4 years later in 2012, when a TV show that investigated cold cases chose to look at Pamela Shelley's case. They sought to examine the gun for DNA and fingerprints. The revelation of the results was startling. Despite the fact that the gun was Ronnie's, neither Pamela nor Ronnie's DNA was found on it. Now, the police and TV program thought the pistol had been cleaned of any form of DNA. At this point, Sheriff Carl Bowen was getting assured that Pamela didn't commit suicide. In August 2012, he went ahead to have a second conversation with Pamela's ex-husband, Jesse Suggs, and his mother Shirley. Shirley admitted to the sheriff that when Pamela was in Cairo, Texas, she and Jesse had secretly been communicating with a burner phone. When asked if she believed Pamela had killed herself, Shirley declared that she believed Ronnie Hendricks was the one who had shot her. According to Jesse Suggs, he and Pamela had a phone conversation just 30 minutes before she was shot. He claimed to have heard Ronnie enter the room, grabbed the phone, and told Jesse that the only way Pamela would be returning home to Arkansas was in a pine box. These revelations were becoming shocking and a motive was established. The detectives had what they needed to go to a grand jury. The medical examiner soon changed Pamela Shelley's cause of death from suicide to undetermined after learning about Ronnie Hendricks' abuse towards Pamela Kyler and other women he had dated. This development is coming 11 years after Pamela Shelley had passed away. In the fall of 2012, Ronnie Hendrick was charged with Pamela Shelley's murder. Finally, 12 years after Pamela's death, Ronnie pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980 in Seattle, Washington, and later moved to Cedar City, Utah with his family after his father finished dental school. As a child, Michael was very active and enjoyed playing sports like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He also excelled in school and achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael worked at a fish plant in Alaska for the summer, where he quickly proved himself as a leader, rising to the position of line manager and overseeing a team of over a dozen men. This experience showcased his strong work ethic and dedication. Michael then embarked on a mission trip to South Brazil with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which deepened his faith and commitment to his religious community. When he returned to the United States, he pursued a business degree at Southern Utah University, graduating in 2004. During his time at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earle, and they fell in love. They got married in the St. George Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael appeared to be a devoted husband and father, often spending quality time with his family at sports events, school concerts, and working on projects together in the garage. On January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery was made at the Haight residence in Enoch. 8 bodies were found, leaving investigators and neighbors stunned. The events leading up to this gruesome finding began when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael failed to show up for work. Their concerned colleagues contacted the police to perform a welfare check at the Haight residence. When officers arrived, they knocked on the door but received no response. As they surveyed the property, it seemed empty. Considering the Haight's had 5 children, the police reached out to the Iron County School District to check if any of the kids were in school that day. However, it was found that none of the children were present. Before entering the home, the police cleared the premises to ensure it was safe to do so. After a thorough search, authorities confirmed that no one required medical attention, and there was no active threat. The Haight's single-story residence with a basement was declared a crime scene, and detectives arrived shortly after. In the main bedroom, detectives found 4-year-old Gavin lying on his stomach. His head turned to the left, with one arm under his head on a pillow and a blanket covering part of his body. Tasha, Gavin's mother, was also partially covered by the blanket. On the other side of the bed, detectives found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earle, Tasha's mother, lying on her back with her head resting on a pillow and partially covered by a blanket, similar to her daughter and grandson. In Bree's room, the 12-year-old girl was found lying in bed, slightly inclined and partially covered with a blanket. In Amon's room, a 7-year-old boy was found lying face down in the corner, without a pillow or blanket. His twin sister Sienna was discovered in her bedroom, lying on her left side in bed, with her head on a pillow and covered with a blanket. The eldest child, 17-year-old Macy, was found in her bed, with her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. In the exercise room of the basement, the detectives found Michael Haight lying on top of a sleeping bag. Sadly, all 8 family members were found dead from gunshot wounds. It quickly became clear to the detectives that Michael Haight was the main suspect, and they believed he had killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. When detectives started investigating, a neighbor provided vital information that helped them reconstruct the crime's timeline. The neighbor told police she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom, and as she left her room, heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, realizing it was after the allowed date for fireworks in the neighborhood, she felt annoyed rather than alarmed by the noise. The neighbor reported hearing an initial loud bang, followed by 2 more in quick succession, then a short pause, another bang, and a longer pause before the final bang. Based on this testimony and the condition of the 8 bodies found inside the house, the detective inferred that the loud noises heard around 3:30 a.m. were directly connected to the events that unfolded that night, leading them to believe that Michael Haight committed the brutal killings during this time frame. During the investigation into the Haight family murders, detectives discovered a 2020 report from an unnamed individual who had notified the Utah Division of Child and Family Services about abuse in the Haight household. According to the report, 14-year-old Macy had confided in this individual about her fear of her father, sparking a further investigation. The authorities then interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she revealed disturbing information. Her father had choked her on multiple occasions, and she lived in fear of being killed by him. She reported that the violent attacks began in 2017, and recounted an incident where her father grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her into a wooden piece of furniture. Michael Haight denied hurting his daughter when questioned by detectives, passing off the incidents as misunderstandings and attributing his emotional state to his father's recent death and his brother's divorce. He claimed to have taken out his frustrations on his older daughter. Despite this, Tasha chose not to press charges, and the Utah Department of Children and Family Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County Prosecutor's Office also declined to pursue the case, as it did not meet the legal requirements for prosecution. A lethality assessment was conducted with Tasha, which indicated that her relationship with Michael was not life-threatening. As a result, victim services were made available to Tasha and her children for several months. Further investigation revealed a different side of Michael, unknown to the community. According to Tasha's friends, they had to speak quietly or turn on the kitchen water when visiting Tasha, as they suspected Michael was monitoring and eavesdropping on their conversations. Tasha's friends would often help her clean the house when they visited, which prevented Michael from finding fault with her. When texting Tasha, her friends noticed that she would respond with brief, positive messages, likely to maintain a positive image in case Michael read them. This suggested that everything was fine in their marriage. The detectives investigating the case discovered that Michael exhibited highly controlling behavior towards Tasha. For instance, he would take away her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Another red flag was his overreaction when Tasha bought a $30 rug from Walmart to replace a dirty one, which was a legitimate need. Michael's anger was unwarranted, and he claimed the purchase was excessive. Tasha confided in her friends that her 7-year-old son, Amon, was increasingly imitating Michael's bad behavior. When Tasha gave Amon instructions, he would respond, "That's not my job," which concerned Tasha as it showed his lack of responsibility and disregard for authority. Tasha's friends reported that in 2022, Tasha attempted to prioritize her own well-being by getting her nails done, a rare treat for her given her many responsibilities. However, her husband Michael refused to let her do so, imposing strict limits on her autonomy and freedom. Moreover, Michael frequently disregarded or ignored Tasha's instructions, and their friend Amon often followed his lead in doing so. Tasha felt more confident in her appearance after indulging herself, and she decided to get her nails done every month. However, Michael was unhappy about this decision and expressed his disapproval, worried about the cost. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 per month, but Michael was unconvinced, arguing that the money could be better spent on their children. Michael's reaction was rooted in his need for control and sense of financial responsibility towards their family. Around the same time, Tasha started prioritizing her self-care and began losing weight, which had been a sensitive topic for her since Michael had often called her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael became furious and accused Tasha of cheating on him, trying to explain the sudden change in her appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalated as he tried to manipulate Tasha's weight loss, pleading with her to stop losing weight because he was worried that other men might find her attractive. This demand was driven by his own insecurities and desire for complete control over Tasha's body and behavior. Tasha's friends also told the police about an incident where the kitchen table broke and Tasha needed to buy a new one. However, Michael refused to give her the money, further demonstrating his controlling behavior. Tasha was fed up with the old table and decided to take initiative by refinishing it to make it look better and more functional. However, Michael was unhappy with her decision because she didn't ask for his permission first. Michael was extremely frugal during the holiday season. Despite earning a good income, he only gave Tasha $100 for each of their 5 children to buy presents, which was not enough in Tasha's opinion. Tasha always made sure her children had a wonderful Christmas, but Michael refused to provide more funds, claiming that he worked hard for his money and saw no reason to give more to his family. He believed that his income was rightfully his alone. Michael's passion for reducing waste and conserving resources led him to implement strict rules on household habits. He forced Tasha to wash and reuse plastic bags, even if they had been used only once or multiple times. This excessive demand for reusing bags added to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling burdened and overwhelmed. Michael's controlling behavior extended to every aspect of Tasha's life, including her daily routines. For instance, he demanded that she use baby wipes for cleaning, claiming it was better for the environment and more cost-effective. However, this requirement caused Tasha discomfort, hygiene issues, and unnecessary stress. If Tasha failed to follow Michael's instructions, she would face severe consequences, which he made clear would lead to serious trouble. This threat instilled fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her no choice but to obey Michael's demands. Natasha confided in her friends that while Michael had been cruel to her throughout their marriage, he had never directed this cruelty towards their children until the late 2010s. However, over time, the abuse towards their daughter Macy escalated, driving her to consider suicide. Michael had unrealistically high expectations for his daughter Macy, demanding she earn perfect grades despite her struggles, which were exacerbated by the emotional burden of his abusive behavior. This pressure was crushing for Macy. Macy's friends shared a disturbing incident with the detective. One evening, Michael returned home to find Macy comforted by her mother. He became enraged and ordered Macy to clean her room. This event left Macy deeply disturbed, remembering the hatred and evil she saw in her father's eyes. The detectives also discovered an incident where 7-year-old Briley disobeyed Michael while playing with a changing table. Michael responded by blaming his wife Tasha for their children's behavior, calling them the worst and most disrespectful in the world. He then humiliated Tasha, calling her fat and ugly in front of their 5 children. This painful incident prompted Tasha to plan her escape and file for divorce after 20 years of marriage. Tasha realized she had to leave her husband Michael after witnessing his abusive behavior and lack of self-control. She knew staying in the marriage would negatively impact her children, and their well-being was more important than her marital commitment. In December 2022, Tasha filed for divorce but asked for the papers to be delivered after Christmas to give her children one last normal holiday before the separation. When Michael received the papers, he tried to act normal, but Tasha saw through it. He told her to leave the children behind, but she refused, taking them to her mother's home in Lynn, Utah. Michael showed up at his mother-in-law's house, trying to convince Tasha to go for a ride with him, but she refused, sensing danger. After filing for divorce, Tasha's mother moved in to support her and the children. However, Michael's actions worsened the situation. He refused to leave the family home, instead moving into the basement. Tasha discovered he had secretly transferred $220,000 from their children's savings accounts without her knowledge or consent. She also found that her inherited firearms were missing, leaving her family vulnerable. The couple's children, Macy and Briley, were affected by the constant drama at home. Macy had a secret phone to record her father's outbursts as evidence for the divorce, while Briley found solace at a neighbor's house. Both girls were relieved about their parents' divorce. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney, expressing concerns about her divorce and Michael's volatile behavior. Although she had relocated him to the basement, the attorneys pressed her about feeling safe. Tasha reassured them she never feared for her or her children's well-being. But in hindsight, her optimism was tragically misplaced. A disturbing discovery emerged from the digital evidence found on the family's computers and cell phones. Just days before the tragic shooting, Michael made a series of concerning Google searches on December 30th at 10:41 p.m. These searches focused on firearms and shooting-related topics, revealing his sinister intentions. The search results showed Michael had asked alarming questions such as the loudness of a 9mm gunshot and what a gunshot sounds like. Before taking his own life, Michael wrote a note expressing his desire to end the controlling behavior he felt he was subjected to by his wife. He stated that he couldn't handle the situation for another day and wanted to escape the manipulation. Michael's note conveyed deep frustration and desperation as he repeatedly asked for help but felt ignored. He emphasized his determination not to be a burden to society. The details of this case have left many in shock, revealing a deeply dysfunctional family plagued by violence. Michael's actions were premeditated and calculated as he carefully planned the murders to catch his wife and children off guard. 28-year-old Nancy McEvers passed away in her home in the Durham community of Washington County, Oregon, on a chilly winter morning in 1983. She was thought to have committed suicide, and there was no suspicion of foul play. The family tried to come to terms with Nancy's passing as the case went cold because it was thought to be a suicide. After 40 years, fresh information surfaced that completely altered the case's trajectory. In 2023, the Nancy McEvers case's mystery was finally solved. After 40 years, what new information enabled police to discover the truth? The Portland metro area is made up of Washington County, which is Oregon's second most populous county out of the state's 36 total counties. One of the main factors that draws people to the Washington County of Oregon and makes them want to settle there is the spectacular backdrop and the rich flora that surrounds it. The allure of this area is the friendly people, the old-fashioned homes, and the hills and mountains that surround the splendid landscape. It is the most populous Washington County in America, with about 600,000 residents. It provides a haven for people looking to escape the bustle of daily life with a culturally vibrant community and a wide range of recreational options like hiking, nature walking, and fishing. But regrettably, it also holds a sinister secret, and it is in this neighborhood that our case today began. In the year 1955, Nancy McEvers was born in Oregon. Lenore Pepper, Nancy's mother, who is currently 97 years old, was accustomed to hearing the adjectives, sweet and beautiful, used to describe her daughter. Nancy was described as friendly by everyone, regardless of whether they had known her for years or were just meeting her. Both of Nancy's sisters were very close to her. She was loved by both her younger sister, Diane Grill, and her older sister, Janet Aglitis, because she was the middle child. Between her mother and the sisters, she frequently served as a mediator. People enjoyed interacting with Nancy and spending time with her because of her loving, caring nature, and outgoing personality. Her maternal instincts were very strong, and she had always been the most compassionate of her sisters. She consequently loved being a mother after she married Randall Randy McEvers and gave birth to a son. Everyone was aware of the fact that she loved being a mother. The aspirations of Nancy's sisters as children were realized because of her love for them and her own child. The three sisters had intended to raise their children jointly. Unexpectedly, the three sisters' first children were born 18 months apart. Their happy and close-knit upbringing was already planned, but in a tragic turn of events, it was to be abandoned in the end. It was a chilly winter morning in the stunning Washington County of Oregon. On January 2, 1983, police received a call from Randall McEvers at 10:38 in the morning. Randall appeared to be inconsolable over his wife's suicide. Deputies from the Washington County Sheriff's Office arrived at the 17300 block of Southwest Rivendell Drive in Durham, a neighborhood that had joined Washington County after 1983 but had not previously been a part of it. The body of Nancy McEvers with a gunshot wound to the head was discovered by the police. Despite the seriousness of the wound and the odds against Nancy surviving, paramedics sped to transport her to a nearby hospital. By merely looking at her, she was almost immediately declared dead. Nancy McEvers' death was determined to be a suicide. At the crime scene, a Smith & Wesson revolver was discovered and taken by the detectives. Inconsistencies on what might have happened to Nancy didn't emerge until after the police began questioning suspects. Only Nancy had been at home during the alleged suicide, along with her 30-year-old husband, Randall, and their 1-year-old son. The crime scene led the investigators to wonder whether Randall had witnessed the suicide or if it took place in a closed area. To make a progress in the investigation, the police needed to wait for the forensic reports. The Nancy McEvers case proved to be much more complicated than the police had anticipated once they received the reports. It didn't take long for investigators to realize there was something else going on in this case after the autopsy report, forensic tests, and ballistic tests were done. The crime lab of the Oregon State Police quickly determined from the medical reports that the case could not have been a suicide. There were far too many irregularities. It is possible to detect gun residue on someone's hands and clothing by taking samples and processing them to look for fused lead, antimony, or barium particles. The first discrepancy was that Nancy's hands were free of any signs of gunshot wounds, but it didn't directly demonstrate anything. This is because the residue can easily be washed away when it comes into contact with other things and can only be detected 6 to 8 hours after the shot was fired. So, even though it was a significant discovery, it was insufficient. When the medical examiner stated that Nancy's wound was too wide to be a suicide case, the second inconsistency appeared. The distance between the person and the gun's muzzle increases with the size of the wound. The report also mentioned that Nancy was battling or attempting to defend herself if there were charred particles on her clothing. With her husband Randall and their 1-year-old child, Nancy had been at home by herself. There were no other people present and no instances of forced entry, according to Randall. The police had, of course, located their main suspect. Detectives began questioning Randall as soon as they could. He gave them the essentials, then admitted that he and Nancy had been fighting over the gun and that during the commotion, he couldn't remember who had pulled the trigger. Randall changed his story, withdrew his statement, and gave the officers a new one after the police poked and prodded him further. He admitted to the police that he had just walked in when Nancy pulled the trigger. By the time Randall entered the room and realized what was happening, she had already shot herself. These two iterations were utterly incompatible with one another. The detective spoke with Nancy's friends, family, and co-workers because it was crucial to learn the truth about what had actually occurred. Every one of them believed Randall was somehow connected to her demise. In order to finally make sense of the situation and establish a solid case against Nancy's husband, the police had only needed a little bit more proof. 2 days after the initial interrogation, the police therefore called Randall in for another round of questioning. They were unable to elicit a confession from him. The police were then visited by Randall's parents, who assured them that their son was prepared to take a polygraph test to prove his innocence. But Randall failed to appear for the appointment. He had completely stopped assisting the police by April of that year. The police declared Nancy McEvers' alleged suicide case to be cold in the absence of any additional leads or fresh evidence. Nancy's family learned a week after her funeral that there were no leads in the case and that there was no evidence of foul play. The family therefore made every effort to leave this gloomy episode in the past. Not only was Nancy's son deprived of all the love she had to give after her death in 1983, but her entire family also underwent a permanent change. The news had a significant impact on them. They were never the same after Nancy died because she was such a significant part of their lives. When Nancy's family learned of her passing, they were in shock. She was a happy, laid-back woman who delighted in every aspect of parenting. They couldn't believe Nancy shot herself in the head while her son was still inside the house. She would never have taken any action that would have permanently cut off her relationship with her son. Nancy's mother, Lenore Pepper, wasn't sure about the circumstances surrounding her daughter's passing. She had suspicions about Randall, but was unable to speak about them. Lenore Pepper let her suspicions die after she had already lost her daughter, and the police had officially informed them that no foul play was suspected. Randall was in charge of raising his 1-year-old son after facing no charges. Lenore did not want to stir up a situation that she was still equipped to handle. She had serious reservations about Randall, but chose to remain silent in order to safeguard her grandson, in case her doubts and uncertainties turned out to be unfounded. Everyone who knew Nancy, including her mother, believed that it could not have been a suicide. However, without an answer from the investigators, their skepticism persisted. Nancy's sister thought it was an awful accident that was never intended to occur. She passed away when she was only 28. Her life, her hopes, and all of her dreams vanished in an instant. No one anticipated that the detectives would reopen the Nancy McEvers case in August 2022 because it had been closed for such a long time. The cold case investigations were handled by the police officers working in the Violent Crimes Unit. When they looked through Nancy McEvers' file, they realized that justice needed to be done. Even though Nancy hadn't committed suicide, nobody knew it. She was brutally murdered. The police reviewed the previously gathered evidence before proceeding. A member of the investigation team named Detective Anilsari described the case as being under-investigated. Since the detective in charge of the case from 1983 had already passed away, there was no way to determine why the officers let this case go cold for so long. It was discovered that the police work of the 1980s was not thorough. The Washington County Sheriff's Office's Forensic Science Unit retested the 1983 evidence, and the results were exactly the same as before. The likelihood that Nancy's death was a suicide was entirely discounted. The police now think that domestic violence played a role in Nancy McEvers' passing in this case. Due to concerns for the family's privacy, investigators decided not to disclose to the media which new leads were investigated. Around 20 people were interviewed by the police, including deputies, detectives, firefighters, and family members who were either there in 1983 or had a close connection to the case. Nancy's story was still relevant 40 years later, and as more information emerged after all these years, the mystery surrounding the case started becoming clear. According to Nancy's file, which was kept with the police, detectives learned that during the case's initial investigation, when the police questioned Nancy's family and Randall, they learned that Randall had been planning to kill Nancy because she wanted a divorce and to leave him. One of the case's investigators, Anel Sarek, expressed his perplexity over the lack of action in the 1980s in spite of this clear evidence. "I can't tell you why they did what they did," he said. Eventually, everything started to make sense, and Randall started to emerge as the main suspect in Nancy McEvers' murder. By the time the evidence came to light, Randall was residing in Tybord, an Oregon town 10 miles south of Portland, Indiana. January 2023. The police showed up at his home and questioned him about the murder of his wife 40 years ago. He admitted to the detectives that hypnotherapy had been used to help him forget everything about that day. By this point, the police had enough leads, and since they desired that Nancy's family experience genuine closure, they sent the case to the Washington County District Attorney's Office for review after speaking with Randall. It turned out that the information Nancy's family was given for 40 years was false. The Nancy McEvers case had undergone enough twists by this point, so when police learned that Randall had killed himself on February 8, 2023, they were horrified. Additionally, he left a note in which he explicitly denied being to blame for Nancy's death. The police thought that Randall's passing brought the case to a conclusion even though the district attorney's office was unable to review it after his passing. Now that their main suspect has passed away, Nancy McEvers' case has been successfully concluded. Lenore was shocked to learn that her suspicions about her daughter's death had been accurate the entire time when the police contacted her. Lenore, the mother of Nancy, expressed her appreciation to the policeman for being able to see her daughter's case through to the end. She wished Nancy's father had lived to see the conclusion of their daughter's case. Everyone loved Nancy, so the news of her heinous murder caused a wide range of emotions. Her family experienced all their emotions again, but everyone in the family thought that Randall's suicide was just as much of witness as his actual court case, although he insisted he had nothing to do with Nancy's death. His own passing served as the acceptance Nancy's family had been hoping for 4 decades. Following the shock of learning that their cherished Nancy had been murdered after 40 years, Nancy's family is informing more of her loved ones of the news, and they are preparing to hold a memorial service for her. Nevertheless, they have experienced fresh grief and trauma. The investigation team that gave her justice was applauded by the entire family. Nancy's family had the misconception that she had committed suicide for 40 years. Although the investigation into Nancy McKeever's death has been concluded, Washington County Sheriff's Office deputies are still looking for additional information. They want anyone with fresh information to come forward and contact the detectives at 503-846-2700 so that Nancy, who was thought to have chosen death for all these years, can receive justice. Case of Schmidt family. Tyler Schmidt was born in Iowa, USA on November 13, 1979. He grew up in Cedar Falls, a city that is home to the University of Northern Iowa. As a young boy, Tyler joined the Boy Scouts, where he earned the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout. This experience sparked a lifelong love for nature and camping in him. The camps organized by the Lutheran Church, which promoted family bonding, were particularly enjoyable to him. In his free time, he learned to play the trumpet. Tyler's true passion, however, lay in adventure and sports. He was a member of the cross-country running team and the swim team at Northern Iowa High School in Cedar Falls. He also enjoyed outdoor activities like canoeing, hiking, and snowshoeing. Later, his interest in computing led him to Truman State University in Missouri, where he studied computer science and earned his degree. It was there that he met Sarah, who would later become his wife. Sarah was born on March 27, 1980, in Kansas City. During her childhood, she spent time near St. Louis with her siblings, Karen, Jane, and Adam. Sharing Tyler's passion for the outdoors, Sarah enjoyed bird watching and studying insects. Like Tyler, she was a dedicated Girl Scout and earned the highest honor, the Gold Award. Her adventure spirit was inherited from her mother, with whom she went on a backpacking trip to Central America. It's no wonder that Tyler knew Sarah was his soulmate when he met her as a student. Sarah excelled academically and demonstrated exceptional leadership skills, particularly in student projects focused on enhancing school life. Her positive leadership and inclination earned her the prestigious Truman Scholarship. While still at Washington High School in Washington, Missouri, this scholarship led her to Truman State University, where she met Tyler. As they fell deeply in love, she readily accepted his marriage proposal. Both Tyler's and Sarah's families supported their decision to marry, recognizing that they were perfect for each other and destined to build a beautiful family together. On June 22, 2002, guests gathered at St. John Lutheran Church for Tyler and Sarah's wedding. Family members took their seats while Sarah waited outside with her father. At 22, the couple exchanged vows, promising to stay together until death parted them. They chose Boundary Waters for their 10-day honeymoon, sharing a love for nature. In the initial 10 years of their marriage, Tyler and Sarah prioritized establishing financial security and advancing their professional careers. After completing their undergraduate degrees in Missouri, the couple relocated to Lawrence, where they pursued their master's degrees at the University of Kansas. Sarah eventually worked as a computer science expert, while Tyler held jobs at a supermarket, a delivery company, and UPS. He also had a long-term career at a company specializing in business billing and payments, which lasted for 18 years. During this period, the Schmidts' marriage was filled with exciting experiences beyond their professional commitments. The couple made it a point to spend quality time together, exploring new outdoor destinations and engaging in various activities. They regularly socialized with family and friends, bonding over their shared love of board games. Occasionally, they participated in events organized by the Lutheran Church. As enthusiastic fans of the Kansas Jayhawks, they attended basketball tournaments held at the Allen Fieldhouse. The year 2013 was a mix of sadness and happiness for the couple. They suffered a significant loss when Sarah's father passed away from a heart attack, leaving his loved ones in grief. However, 2 years later in 2015, they experienced the joys of parenthood with the birth of their son, Arlo. In 2018, they welcomed their beautiful daughter, Lula Schmidt, into the world. When Arlo turned 6 and Lula was 3, the family made the decision to move to Cedar Falls to be closer to Tyler's family. The community of Cedar Falls warmly welcomed them, and soon they became active members of it. Tyler continued his work as a software engineer, while Sarah took on a role as an assistant at the city's public library. The children enrolled in the preschool program at Lincoln Elementary School. Tyler and Sarah were renowned for their kind nature and willingness to lend a helping hand, making everyone around them feel valued and important. This dedication earned them the admiration and affection of their neighbors and the entire community. Similarly, at the library, Sarah's warm and friendly personality quickly made her a well-known and appreciated figure, both among her colleagues and the wider community. The couple instilled their passion for outdoor activities and nature in their children, Arlo and Lula. In 2021, they began taking their kids camping, and despite their busy schedules, the children loved these trips so much that the parents made time for them whenever possible. By mid-2022, Sarah's workload had increased significantly. She took a day off in June to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary and planned another day off in July for a family vacation. She had to finish a project for the library by July 26th, but was determined not to let it interfere with the family's plans. During the week of July 11th, Sarah told her brother's wife that she would be taking the kids camping at Makata Cave State Park in Jackson County, Iowa, a popular destination known for its 13 impressive caves and stunning natural landscapes. On Thursday, July 21st, the family packed up their car and drove 140 miles to reach Makata Caves. The Schmidt family, Tyler and Sarah, both 42, and their children Arlo, 9, and Lula, 7, arrived at the campsite before 5 p.m. As the camping area was crowded, they set up near the park's entrance. A few hours later, around 7 p.m., another family parked their vehicle about 200 feet from the initial family's tent. This family consisted of Joe and Cecilia Sherwin, and their 23-year-old son Anthony, who hailed from Nebraska. The Sherwins proceeded to set up 2 separate tents, one for Joe and Cecilia, and another for their son Anthony. At the time, they were on their way back home following a week-and-a-half-long camping trip that had taken them to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The journey had been an enjoyable experience, and it had brought Joe, Cecilia, and Anthony closer together. Anthony was a devoted son, praised by his mom for his kind and sensitive nature. He was an excellent student and entrepreneur, working on a lucrative business venture that would financially support his parents. Though his mom, Cecilia, didn't know the details, Anthony kept her updated, mentioning only that his project involved secure emails. At Makata Caves, the campers retired to their tents as night fell. However, their peaceful slumber was disrupted before dawn on July 22nd by the sudden sound of gunshots. Just prior to the commotion, a man clad in black had entered the Schmidt's tent, attacking Tyler and then Sarah. Arlo, who had been asleep, was awakened by his sister Lula's screams. As he turned, he was met with a horrifying sight: blood inside the tent. Frantic with fear, he managed to escape and ran to seek help. As he fled, he heard one final shot. Meanwhile, Cecilia and Joe, who were camped nearby, rushed out of their tent amidst the chaos. Joe searched frantically for his son among the campers, asking if anyone had seen him. Arlo, still in a state of panic, continued to run until he encountered the sheriffs. He was screaming for help, explaining that his parents had been shot. Cecilia grasped his hand and ran with him to the park entrance. Once there, terrified and unsure of what had transpired, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. She was beside herself with worry, fearing that her son might be among the victims, since he had been sleeping near the tent where the shots had come from. Cecilia called the Jackson County 911 operator to report hearing gunshots, but she struggled to pronounce the name of the park where she was, making it difficult to convey her location. She explained that she was with a boy who claimed that his parents had been shot. The call between Cecilia and 911 lasted 23 minutes as she answered the operator's questions. The operator relayed the attack to the police and park rangers, but the call was briefly disconnected. Cecilia persisted and called back, only to be put on hold while the dispatcher contacted emergency responders. Despite the tense and nervous atmosphere in the park, Cecilia remained calm, thanks to the adrenaline. After providing details about their exact location, she handed the phone to Arlo, the boy. He told the dispatcher that he was in a tent with his mom, sister, and dad, and when he woke up, he saw someone dressed in black holding a gun. When the 911 operator asked the child where his father was, he paused before responding that he thought his father was hurt. At 6:30 a.m., police officers and paramedics arrived at the campsite to find a horrific scene. All occupants of the Schmitz tent were dead. The once peaceful campsite had become a crime scene. Law enforcement immediately launched a search for the shooter, who could have been anywhere. The tactical team swiftly evacuated Makoka Cave State Park and Camp Shalom, a nearby Christian summer camp, located 1.5 miles from the attack site. As officials evacuated visitors, they gathered them outside the park. Once everyone was accounted for, it was clear that only one person, Anthony Sherwin, was missing, and he was armed. During an aerial search at 11 a.m., police found a body. Upon reaching it, they confirmed it was Anthony, deceased. Although an investigation was necessary, police identified him as the prime suspect in the homicides, believing he had committed the attack on the Schmitz before taking his own life. The authorities closed the park following the incident, a measure that remained in place until July 28th. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources offered their condolences, with their spokesperson expressing devastation on behalf of the entire team, stating that the event had shaken Iowa's tradition of enjoying its natural wonders. But the legacy would continue for the millions of families who recreate in Iowa's parks. As a mark of respect for Sarah's co-workers, the local authority closed the library for the rest of the day. The tragedy also drew reactions from other political leaders, including the Iowa governor, who expressed horror at the attack and sorrow for the unimaginable tragedy. A U.S. House representative from Iowa tweeted that it was a senseless and horrific crime. Sarah's family was devastated when they lost her. Her sister was particularly heartbroken, feeling as though her life had been turned upside down. She couldn't accept that Sarah was gone, and that she would no longer be able to pick up the phone and talk to her or watch her niece grow up. Family members came from as far away as North Dakota, Texas, and Michigan to attend the private funeral service, which was held at Greenwood Cemetery on August 2nd. Meanwhile, as the loved ones of the Schmitz coped with their grief and tried to console and care for Arlo, the authorities continued their investigation into the brutal crime. According to the Iowa Department of Public Safety's findings, which were based on the autopsy results, Tyler died from a gunshot wound and multiple sharp force injuries. Sarah's death was caused by sharp force injuries alone, and their young daughter was both shot and strangled. In early August 2022, authorities officially identified Anthony Sherwin as the person responsible for the murder of the Schmidt family. Sherwin, 23, had no prior criminal record and acted alone before taking his own life, according to the police. The investigation failed to uncover any motive behind the attack. The assistant director of the Division of Criminal Investigation clarified that there was no established connection between Anthony and the Schmidt family prior to the incident, despite them being neighboring campers. The Nebraska Police Department assisted in the investigation by searching the Sherwin family apartment, but found no suicide note or any indication that could explain why Anthony targeted the Schmidt family and himself. His Facebook page yielded no clues as it was completely blank. Regarding the weapon used in the attack, the assistant director of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation reported that a single hand-assembled firearm was recovered near Anthony's body. This type of weapon, commonly known as a ghost gun, is built by individuals using online purchase parts without restrictions, as they lack serial numbers, making them difficult to regulate and trace. Anthony's parents confirmed that their son had built his own weapon using online instructions. However, they clarified that he did this as a challenge, not because he wanted to own a gun. They emphasized that Anthony was responsible and had never hurt anyone or any animal. The parents, Cecilia and her husband, said their family had never owned guns before. But due to Nebraska's rising crime rates, they decided to acquire some. Because they were new to handling guns, they even took classes to learn how to use them properly. They brought the homemade gun on their trip to protect themselves from crime and possible bear attacks, which they had experienced before while camping. They intended to get rid of the gun later. When they returned home, Anthony's parents were determined to prove their son's innocence. They believed he was a victim of murder, not the killer. According to his mother, an independent autopsy report showed that Anthony had been shot twice, not once as the police claimed. She was puzzled by how he could have shot himself a second time, which challenged the authorities' suicide theory. They also questioned the description of the clothing the attacker wore. Cecilia remembered telling the 911 operator that the attacker was wearing black, which didn't match what her son had on, green shorts she had given him the day before the tragedy occurred. Furthermore, Cecilia and Joe claimed that the police did not reveal where they found Anthony's body, or whether the weapon he supposedly used to take his own life was the same one used in the attack on the Schmidts. Cecilia sent an email to the media outlining her concerns about the investigation into her son Anthony's death. She emphasized that Anthony had too many reasons to live and would not have abandoned everything in such a way. In her opinion, Anthony was incapable of killing and had no connection to the Schmidt family, and they had seen no signs of him planning an attack. When she asked investigators if they had conducted a ballistic test to confirm matches, they did not respond. Similarly, when Anthony's parents requested the final investigation report to commission an independent review, they received no response. In January 2023, a media outlet submitted a request for public records related to the case under Iowa's Open Records Law and the Freedom of Information Act. The request included incident reports, investigation documents, crime scene summaries, and autopsy reports. However, Devin McClone from the Iowa Department of Public Safety Commissioner responded that the requested records were not public, and the office could only share the immediate facts and circumstances of the case, as provided in the press release links. A few days after the tragedy, a media outlet emailed the official to ask if the weapon Anthony used to take his own life was the same one used in the murders, but she never responded. As it stands, the police believe that Anthony Sherwin was a random killer who brutally murdered 3 beloved members of a Cedar Falls family. However, the family of Cecilia and Joe refuses to accept that their son, who was kind and studious, was involved in the crime. They insist that he was another innocent victim and are determined to prove his innocence. Arlo, the sole survivor of the massacre, was taken in by his aunt and uncle in Cedar Falls. In an interview with a local newspaper, Sarah's brother proudly described his nephew as brave and reported that he was doing well mentally. The GoFundMe page set up after the tragedy continues to receive donations to support Arlo's care and education. Case of Vincent Brothers. Vincent Brothers, a beloved principal in Bakersfield, California, was informed that on Tuesday, July 8, 2003, his wife, children, and mother-in-law were tragically found murdered in their home. Despite the house being ransacked, nothing was taken, leading the police to rule out robbery and suspect intentional homicide. Vincent was cleared as he had a solid alibi, proving he was out of town during the incident. Subsequent investigations revealed a disturbing truth that shocked the entire community: the chilling case of Vincent Brothers. Born on May 30, 1962, in Beeport, Long Island, New York, Vincent was known for his charm, reliability, and hard work from a young age. He had also served in the Marine Reserves after graduating from Norfolk State University. Moving to California in the mid-80s for further studies, he eventually earned his master's degree. Vincent had a tumultuous past with relationships, despite rising quickly as a school administrator. He had 2 brief marriages that ended in separation. In 1988, while working at California State University in Bakersfield, he had a daughter with his then-girlfriend. He filed a lawsuit to establish paternity and eventually gained custody and visitation rights. Initially ordered to pay $350 monthly for support, this amount was raised to $771 by 2003. In the same year, he faced legal consequences, receiving a 6-day jail sentence and probation for a misdemeanor charge of spousal abuse. In 1992, Vincent entered another marriage, which also ended abruptly after allegations of threats to kill and physical abuse by his second wife. She filed for divorce in 1996. Allegations have been made against Vincent, who was the vice principal at Emerson Middle School, for sexual misconduct towards a colleague. The woman reported instances of harassment, including an incident at his home where Vincent physically assaulted her and prevented her from contacting the authorities by taking her phone. She tried to report the incident to the police but felt discouraged as Vincent was a respected member of the community, which made her doubt if her report would be taken seriously. The harassment continued with inappropriate touching at the school's front counter, leading the woman to take a leave of absence due to the hostile work environment. As the intimidation escalated to threatening phone calls, the school district investigated the claims and warned Vincent about the possibility of career consequences if found true. Despite denying the accusations and having a clean disciplinary record, the school administration decided to transfer Vincent to another school after their investigation. Vincent worked at John C. Fremont Elementary School in Bakersfield, California. He was well liked for his routine of walking students home safely after school. While at Fremont Elementary, he met Joni Harper, the campus security supervisor. They began dating and got married after their first child. Marquise was born. Their family grew with the arrival of their second child, Lindsay, in 2000. Unfortunately, their marriage was annulled in September 2001 due to Vincent's infidelity. In 2003, Vincent and Joni secretly remarried, and 4 months later, their third-born child, Marshall, was born. However, Joni soon confided to friends that their marriage was facing issues once again. This time, she expressed fear that Vincent might try to harm her. Joni, a loving mother of 3, lived with her husband, her mother, Ernestine Harper, and their children in Bakersfield, California. They were known in their community as a joyful and involved family, actively engaging in community events and maintaining amicable connections with others. Joni worked as a basketball official, while her mother was recognized for her advocacy as a civil rights activist. Outsiders perceived Vincent and Joni's marriage as solid, unaware of the tragic events that would unfold. Vincent had already moved out of the house in April, 3 months before the incident, due to frequent conflicts with his mother-in-law, Ernestine. On Sunday, July 6, 2003, Joni, along with her 3 children, Marquez, Lindsay, and 6-week-old Marshall, and her mother, Ernestine Harper, attended a morning church service. After the service, they went for lunch at the Black Angus restaurant before returning home. Once home, they took a nap before planning to attend the evening church service. In a horrifying sequence of events, Joni and her children were in one bedroom, while her mother occupied another area of the house when they were ruthlessly and fatally attacked. There were no apparent signs of forced entry, and the assailant breached the house and initiated the assault by firing 2 shots at Joni's head in her bedroom, followed by targeting Lindsay in the center of her back. Ernestine, likely alerted by the noise, moved towards the hallway to investigate, but she was fatally shot twice in the face, collapsing in the hallway just outside her bedroom. Returning to Joni's room, the attacker proceeded to shoot Marquez and delivered a final fatal shot to the baby's back. Each gunshot was strategically aimed to ensure fatal harm. The assailant, rather than immediately fleeing, went to the kitchen, retrieved a knife from the butcher block, and viciously stabbed Joni multiple times in the back. The assailant then tampered with the TV connections, but placed the TV carefully on the ground. Additionally, Joni's purse was emptied onto the laundry room floor, yet nothing valuable was taken, including money that was left untouched. It appeared the assailant aimed to mislead the authorities, creating the impression of a break-in and seeking to eliminate any potential witnesses. Afterward, the assailant covered the bodies in the bedroom with blankets and pillows taken from other rooms. On July 8, 2003, Joni's closest friend, Kelsey Spann, grew concerned as she hadn't heard from Joni, her mother, or the children since they attended church that Sunday. Worried that something might have happened, Kelsey decided to visit Joni's home to check on them, using the key Joni had entrusted to her. Kelsey attempted to unlock the side door, but found it difficult to do so, as something was preventing it from opening. She proceeded to the back of the house and discovered an unlocked sliding glass door, which was an unusual occurrence. Upon entering, she made the grisly discovery of Joni, Ernestine, Marquise, Lindsay, and Marshall, all deceased. Acting swiftly, Kelsey contacted the authorities at 7 a.m., prompting their arrival at the horrifying scene where the 5 individuals had been brutally murdered. The peaceful ranch-style residence where Joni, her children, and mother resided sat in a tranquil corner lot within the neighborhood. Law enforcement concluded that the family was tragically killed on a Sunday afternoon following their return from church. Detectives assessed the situation, identifying Joni as the primary target due to the severity of her injuries. They inferred that the assailants' actions indicated profound anger. The police expressed concern for Vincent's safety and discovered that he had traveled to Ohio. Detective Watts, one of the detectives, traveled to North Carolina as Vincent and his brother Melvin had gone there to visit their mother. Upon interacting with Vincent in North Carolina, the police found him in a traumatized state, deeply distressed and unable to articulate coherent sentences, which did not offer much insight into the investigation. His demeanor did not align with that of a probable killer, especially considering he was on the opposite side of the country at the time of the murders. They initially excluded him as a suspect, and Vincent also provided receipts confirming purchases made on the days surrounding the tragedy, solidifying his absence from Bakersfield, California, where the horrific events unfolded. However, Detective Watts still had doubts. He noticed that Vincent never asked about how his wife and children died on July 11, 2003. Vincent Brothers returned to Los Angeles, but was notably absent from his family's memorial service. However, on July 16, 2003, he attended their funeral. As the police investigated further, they discovered that Vincent had moved out from his family's residence in April 2003 and was no longer living with them. His wife, Joni, had been planning a second divorce and intended to seek child support for their children. Authorities also uncovered Vincent's history of violence against women, leading to a closer scrutiny of his alibi. Further scrutiny revealed surveillance videos from store checkouts depicting Melvin, not Vincent, making purchases. Confronted with this evidence, Melvin disclosed that Vincent instructed him to visit various stores at specific times, using Vincent's name instead of his own. Police could not locate any witnesses who had seen Vincent during the tragic period. According to Melvin and the family, they had not encountered Vincent from the evening of July 4th to the evening of July 7th. Despite their efforts, authorities lacked direct evidence linking Vincent to the murders. Vincent Brothers had rented a Dodge Neon upon his arrival in Columbus, Ohio, and stayed at his brother's house. According to police speculations, Vincent allegedly flew to Columbus on July 2, 2003, under the pretense of visiting family. On July 4th, he purportedly traveled back from Ohio to Bakersfield, where the tragic incident occurred on the afternoon of Sunday, July 6, 2003. Afterward, he returned to Ohio, arriving late on Monday the 7th. Law enforcement meticulously examined the Dodge, focusing on its radiator and air filters. The Burt Museum of Entomology at the University of California, Davis was enlisted for assistance, with Dr. Lynn Kimsey, an expert in bug identification, meticulously analyzing insects found in the car. Dr. Kimsey's examination unveiled over 100 insects, meticulously identified by species, notably some exclusive to the western region beyond the Rockies. Certain insects indicated that Vincent traveled at night. Through careful analysis, she charted a path indicating the car's westward journey from Ohio. Investigators tracked down the vehicle's previous 5 renters, confirming that none had driven the car to California or near the Rockies. In their scrutiny of evidence from the home, the police focused on photographic evidence and observed a latex glove tip among items discarded in the laundry room. Upon testing, the tip revealed a DNA match, identifying it as a 1 in 6 billion match to Vincent Brothers. Detective Watts had discovered that Vincent planned to leave town. He had started selling his possessions and even listed his house for sale. Consequently, on April 30, 2004, Vincent was arrested and charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in 2007, with prosecutor Lisa Green leading the case. The prosecution theorized that Vincent's motive for the murders was financial, contending that he acted out of fear of potential child support payments due to Joni's impending divorce. They portrayed Vincent as a serial adulterer who would disappear for long periods and often respond violently when questioned, particularly towards his wife or girlfriend at the time. Numerous witnesses, including Dr. Lynn Kimsey, were summoned by the prosecution. Kimsey testified that the insects discovered in the Dodge Neon were consistent with those typically found along Interstate 70 while traveling. Testimony further corroborated that the 5,424 miles driven from July 2nd to July 11th aligned with the presented evidence. However, when Melvin testified, he attempted to retract his previous statements, claiming that he had lied to the police regarding Vincent providing him with a credit card to use. The defense countered by presenting an expert in high-speed driving. The expert asserted the difficulty of maintaining an average speed of 70 miles per hour throughout the journey from Ohio to California. They contended that such a trip would have been impossible for Vincent to accomplish. Additionally, their own pathologists took the stand, testifying that the murders likely occurred as late as Monday morning on July 7, 2003. To support their case, the defense presented interrogation tapes intended to demonstrate that Melvin had been coerced by the police into altering his testimony. They also brought forth a witness to a car incident that Vincent claimed occurred on Sunday morning. In this incident, a boy on a bicycle collided with Vincent's rental car at an intersection. While this incident was not reported to the police due to a lack of damages or injuries, the prosecution diligently sought to verify the bike accident story. Detective Watts traveled back to Ohio and located Tom Lieb, a car dealer who flew to California to testify. Lebby confirmed that he was driving during the bike accident and that the boy collided with his car while he was stationary at an intersection. The defense strategy involved presenting Vincent's other brother, Troy, as Vincent's alibi witness. Troy was intended to testify that he had flown in from New York and spent that Saturday and Sunday with Vincent touring different state colleges in Ohio. Vincent had expressed interest in applying to these colleges to further his graduate studies. However, complications arose when, after lunch on the day Troy was scheduled to testify, he was nowhere to be seen. Consequently, Vincent himself took the stand, vehemently denying any extramarital affairs and adamantly refuting the accusation of murdering his family. Throughout his testimony, Vincent frequently broke down in tears. The prosecution brought in Franklin School principal Carla Toya as a witness. She testified about her involvement with Vincent, dating back to the year his son was born in 1996, and their on and off relationship until 2002 when she ended it. Toya then confessed that she and Vincent had been intimate just weeks before the family tragedy, contradicting Vincent's staunch denial of previous affairs. This revelation undermined Vincent's claims of fidelity. The prosecution posited that the crime had been meticulously premeditated, acquiring knowledge of the family's Sunday routine, granting the killer control and a window of opportunity. Exploiting this familiarity, the perpetrator waited until the family was asleep, using a copied key to gain entry through the sliding glass door and methodically execute each member of the family on May 15th. Vincent Brothers was found guilty on 5 counts of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances, making him eligible for the death penalty. After hearing testimony from 137 witnesses, the jury deliberated for nearly 2 days before reaching their decision. Following the verdict, Vincent was escorted from the courtroom and returned to Laro Detention Facility under strict security. On September 27th, Judge Michael Bush of the Deer County Superior Court sentenced Vincent Brothers to death by lethal injection. He was detained at San Quentin State Prison in California, where he is still currently housed. During the sentencing hearing, family members were given the opportunity to deliver statements. Vincent's only surviving child, his firstborn Margaret Kern Brothers, announced her resignation from the Brothers family, expressing that upon leaving the courtroom, she would solely identify herself as Margaret Carr. The evidence suggested that Vincent Brothers lacked empathy and remorse for his actions, a common trait in what many call a psychopath. His perception of his children as mere objects indicated a complete detachment from any emotional connection with them. The act of stabbing Joni appeared to be a deliberate means of severing his ties with her on a physical level. His action of covering the victims seemed to indicate an attempt to shield himself from confronting the aftermath of his deeds, suggesting a deeply personal involvement in these killings. It is a tragic and unfortunate reality that the victims faced against this monstrous individual. As we reflect on this heart-wrenching tale, our thoughts are with the victims whose lives were tragically cut short and the loved ones they left behind. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.